Okay, Professor Scott, could you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, of course. I'm Professor Dr. Scott MacIvor, Associate Professor here at U of T in Department of Biological Sciences.
Okay. Did you always know if you wanted to become a bio professor?
I always knew I wanted to become a professor. Certainly, biological science is where I found my interest very early on. But yeah, I still have my like grade 6 yearbook.
Yeah.
You open it up, and each student in the class is asked like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I wanted to be a marine biologist and be a biology professor in New Zealand. So,
Oh, wow.
Oh, very specific.
very specific.
Yeah.
I mean, this is back like pretty much pre-internet. So like logging into a university website wasn't possible. So, my mom, who was really supportive in terms of whatever I wanted to do, handwriting a letter to the university in Canterbury in New Zealand and getting actually back an information package about the university. So it's like from very early on, I knew I wanted to do this kind of thing, like study, do research, not necessarily have a boss.
Yeah.
And that attracted me from very early on. Yeah.
So you've always wanted to become a marine biologist, or at least something like related to biology.
Yeah, that's it. So I grew up in Kitchener, which is like an hour and a half outside of Toronto. And when I was thinking about what universities I wanted to go to become a marine biologist, I grew up with like room full of aquariums and coral and crabs and stuff like that. I really wanted to get into that. I went to Guelph, and within a few weeks, you're like, there's no ocean here. There's no marine science here. There certainly were professors studying like killifish and things like that, but there weren't really those opportunities. And it made me rethink what my major was in first year. And I switched to ecology, like an ecology major. And what was, impressed upon me very quickly, and something I was already interested in, like plants and bugs and birds and all things nature I was interested in. But going to university in my first year and into my second year, like realizing how diverse like insects communities were, because my aspirations in being a marine biologist was all the shapes and colors and size and interactions and all this beauty we see when back then, watch a VHS cassette or turn on a cable TV channel. But, you can log into YouTube and see such amazing diversity. And that is what intrigued me. But going to university, I switched to terrestrial. I moved on land. Yeah. And I got really interested in insects and eventually pollinators and flowers and all of that color, shape, size, and so forth that, elicits like so much beauty in nature. Yeah.
So how important would you say pollinators or like bee insects are to our ecosystem and environment?
I mean, yeah, that's a big question, right? Like, bees are the most effective and essential pollinators around the world. There's like well over 20,000 described species and many more to learn about.
Of bees?
Of bees, yeah.
Aren't they
It's
endangered?
actually interesting.
Well, I mean, like all things in nature and biodiversity, there's so many species, right? So some species are doing well. They respond well or indifferently to like environmental changes that we, manifest in the environment. And others are really sensitive to it, right? So the other factor there, bees are important. They visit lots of flowers and perpetuate native plants and food production and so on. But we really don't know a lot about their population dynamics or how many of them are or even where they nest or what they visit. So to me, as a budding scientist in my undergrad, that was like exciting to me. It's like, whoa, it's like a field full of gaps. Like, what can we learn here?
Yeah.
So in terms of them being endangered, yes, there are a few species that we have actually done the work to learn that they have declined precipitously, and here are the threats. But for the vast majority of bees, even in Canada, like where there's lots of this kind of research, we know very little. I often say like 3/4 of the bee species in Canada, of which there's like 900 plus species, live in the ground, and like 3/4 of those, we don't know what ground they live in, like what soil textures or components and stuff they're seeking. So how can we protect a set of species that are potentially declining if we don't know enough about their ecology, their biology,
And what they need.
and what they need exactly?
Yeah.
So it's more than just flowers, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. How diverse are those bees? Because when you think about different animals, the diversity, for example, like when you think of bears or something,
Sure.
you think, okay, there's a red panda, Like a normal panda, there's just extremely different. You don't even think of them as the same subspecies even.
Sure. Yeah.
So how diverse are like bees when it comes to it?
Yeah. So, I mean, in Canada we have a couple species of bear, and as I said already, in Canada we've got like 900 species of bee, and other places around the world there's obviously more. One interesting thing about bees is there's only 7 families of bees on Earth, but 6 of those families are here in Ontario.
Oh, really?
So, even within 7 families, there's tens of thousands of species, right? You got to think with insects, unlike some mammals, they've been around a long time, right?
Yeah.
So long that, referencing back to evolution class in our first year together, right? Land has shifted through eras, right?
Yeah.
And at one point there were these like supercontinents where species could move all around, and as the land breaks apart, those species or those communities are separated now, and they become, you guys know,
They change.
they become new species. And so we have things like carpenter bees, which we have one species of carpenter bee here. It drills a hole in the wood, and it drives people who have a cottage or a wooden shed crazy. But those carpenter bees, there's hundreds of species found all over the world, from New Zealand to Japan to Africa and across the world. And the one we have is a typical like traditional like black and yellow looking bee, shiny. But if you're in Greece, they're bright purple and huge. And if you're in South Africa, it's a completely different bee too. So circling back to bees and why bees, like they're just so interesting. Like in terms of just the way they look, but also what they do and their importance. Yeah. So lots of diversity. Yeah.
Could you tell us about your academic journey from your undergrad at Guelph to your master's and PhD at St. Mary, and most importantly, how did you end up at UTSC?
So as I said, like as a kid, I always wanted to go to university and become a scientist and do that kind of thing. So I chose to go to Guelph. It was, close-ish to home, but far enough that I would have a bit of freedom. And Guelph is a wonderful school for biology and conservation and wildlife management and environmental sciences. So I knew that was like a place I wanted to be. And it was fantastic. I had a really great undergrad experience and met lots of professors and graduate students who were kind of encouraging. And as I said, like even first day of undergrad, I knew that one day I wanted to go to grad school and get a PhD and like really sink my teeth into something that and be afforded the time to really understand a system. And so to get on your question about the trajectory, like at Guelph, I kind of like switched and changed my major, but I got experience working like in labs. So when I went to Guelph, in high school, I worked at a music store called Music World. It's gone now. And when I moved to Guelph to start my undergrad, I needed a part-time job because, costs.
Yeah.
And so I got a job at another music store called HMV. It's like an old CD and record store.
This one's still here, right? It's not.
What's that?
It's not gone.
It's gone. Yeah, no,
It's gone too?
HMV's gone. Yeah, no. Yeah,
Unfortunately.
Toys R Us have like a little HMV section, but I think Toys R Us is gone now
Oh
too.
my God. they're
Anyway,
gone too.
Wait, Toys R Us is gone?
yeah.
I didn't know that.
They went back.
They're on the way. They're on the way out. I had a gift card. I don't know how to spell it now. But no, I worked at a record store, and I had a really good friend who we talked music and like came to Toronto, go to lots of concerts and stuff. And
So you're into music.
yeah, and his partner was a honeybee biologist, and he's like, "Oh, you're looking for summer, experience? Like, why don't you tag along and go to the bee lab and learn a bit about honeybees, how to keep them and stuff?" And so that initiated my like relationship with like bees and pollinators and insects and stuff. It was so great, and that led to the next volunteer position and the next work study position and so on and so forth. Kind of integrating yourself into the lab space a little bit. And at that point, going into 4th year, I took a 5th year. It's like, hey, do you want to do a master's here at Guelph? And we're thinking you could like revise a genus of flies. And I was like, I don't know if I want to go down like a systematics route, like very meticulous, careful work looking at traits of a set of species that are maybe undescribed, try to like describe new species, but it's very careful work, and I'm all about that. But in undergrad, I really learned about like the opportunities to use ecological theory or biodiversity ecosystem function relationships to like apply them for the betterment of people and nature, like in terms of balancing these needs, right? And especially in cities. And so, I mean, it's a podcast, so I can talk, right?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So at that time, I had like another mentor who had this idea. It's called the urban cliff hypothesis. And this idea that the way cities have been built, like subconsciously connect us back to when humans first became successful on Earth, right? Like living in cliffs and caves and scree slopes, like where you could see the predator, you could see the prey, and like that led to like a turning point when people became more. So we look around a city, we go downtown, buildings, tall, rocky structures, and so on. And this professor, his name's Doug Larson, he had this idea that a lot of the species that live in cities and do well in cities, they actually probably evolved from like cave, slope, rocky environments. And when you trace back bed bugs, pigeons, rock doves, hawks, and so on, it's like, whoa, like they actually like came from these environments that actually represent a very small fraction of the types of environments around the whole world, right? So I was like really blown by that. Like, wow, this is interesting. We can start to understand the urban biodiversity and maybe how we can harness that to like improve cities. And at that time, the idea of like urban greening and green infrastructure and green roofs were like a brand new concept, at least in North America. They've been around for many, many years in Europe. And I learned about a professor in Nova Scotia, in Halifax, who's studying green roofs and like plant facilitation and community dynamics. And I told my supervisor at Guelph, who was hoping that I would stick around to do like fly work, that I'm gonna study green roofs. And his reaction was, that's a fad. Like, why would you do that? Don't do that. Do the masters that will be, you know, more scientifically oriented, not so applied. But I went for it anyway. And it was the best decision I ever made. Yeah, because I was able to really come into a new field and really interact with landscape architects and engineers and city planners and start to see myself as like an ecologist fitting into like a multidisciplinary team. You know, to solve the big problems we face today and tomorrow, we need different ideas. We need people working together. And so that really allowed me to flex more how I communicate my work, to people who have a different set of expertise and find common ground and so on. And so that was really effective for me. And, you know, I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I'm climbing onto buildings. And I mean, there's insects up here. There's ladybugs and spiders and bees and butterflies. And I'm on a roof of a building in the downtown. And I thought to myself, like, hey, I think for a PhD, I want to study urban plant-insect interactions. I want to study bees in cities. And that motivated me to look to see who's doing that. And once again, at that time, it's like 2009, there weren't really anybody doing that kind of work in Canada. At the time, a few people doing small little things. But I interacted with a professor at York who's now retired. His name's Lawrence Packer. And drink of water here.
Go ahead.
So you had a lot of work by building a bridge from theoretical sciences until application-based, like urban diversity.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. And I knew I wanted to be in Toronto. It's like the big city, and there's lots of opportunities here as I kind of like verge into this, you know, applied ecology career, maybe, right? And I came to interview, and I was like, I want to study urban bees and diversity and all of this. And he's the kind of professor who like identifies all the new bee species around the world. He did tons of work in South America and Central America, all over Australia. And I came with this full plan explaining what I wanted to do. And he's like, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. That's interesting. But like, how do you think about this idea? It's like, would you ever want to move to Haiti and study the bees of Haiti? And this is before there was a very large earthquake that really shattered the island and society there.
Haiti.
And, you know, I was kind of not in a position to like uproot my life, and I was really looking forward to move to Toronto. And luckily enough, I was able to get a scholarship and make that happen. But quickly, well, maybe not quickly because we're doing this, but when I arrived in Toronto, they were just creating a green roof bylaw, like a law in Toronto that required green roofs on all industrial commercial, institutional, and residential buildings of certain sizes and stuff. So there was this huge momentum to realize green roofs and green infrastructure in Toronto at the time. It's like 2010. And I show up and like somehow people find my email like, hey, are you like a green roof scientist? Like, can we talk? Like, can we come to my lunch and learn in my office and stuff? And suddenly I'm getting all these opportunities to like talk about biodiversity in cities and green roofs and how to specify them, install them. And I started consulting business and starting to like consult as an ecologist on projects that are kicking off. And so anyway, I'm jumping around a whole bunch, but
it was definitely the best decision for your life then.
It was cool because I was able to do science, but not just like hold away. I was able to really engage with people and communities, the residents of Toronto, city planners, and so on. And that really guided where I figured out what I wanted to do with my life. Like in terms of a career as a professor or like an ecological consultant at the time, really like ecology in cities and how we can balance humans and nature and stuff. And I started teaching in landscape architecture downtown quite a bit, urban planning at TMU. And then I heard about a postdoc here at UTSC with another professor here, Mark Cadot. And, you know, I had all this bee experience, had this like urban planning experience, but I didn't have like a lot of quantitative statistics and like analysis. What's the new analysis that could really level up the work that I do? And so when I learned of a potential opportunity with Mark here, I applied. And there was a lot of applicants, like 70 applicants. And they whittled it down to like 7 or so. And then he passed around the CVs of the potential 7 to everyone in his lab. And he asked his lab to rank everybody. And I mean, I did get an interview, and of course I got the postdoc, and I find out later that 2 of the like really core PhD students lab, who became my very close friends and still are, they had ranked me dead last.
Oh,
Dead last.
Yeah, because you know, as a PhD student, when you're getting a new postdoc in lab, you want to learn something from them too, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, I guess I didn't have too much to offer in that moment, but it ended up going the opposite way, and we became very close collaborators and published lots of stuff. So, once I arrived here, there was an opportunity in a couple years of a faculty position in urban ecology, and it was kind of like conveyed to me, hey, do a good job here, and you may be competitive for this thing, right? And all the while, I'm trying to publish papers and keep abreast of, you know, research and conferences and stuff like that. But at the time, Mark ended up moving to China for a year for sabbaticals. I had to take over the lab, and it gave me lots of experience and opportunity to kind of work, you know, from undergrad to postdoc and everyone in between, and kind of bring projects to fruition and kind of be boss a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
And that really leveled me up, I think, just professionally and like what it takes, you know? It was hard, but I ended up getting a position, and that was back in 2017. Thanks for indulging me, guys. That was great.
No, absolutely,
No.
absolutely. What's something interesting you've learned after studying bees for this long?
Interactions. You know, like they're diverse, and they're what makes things work, right? Like productivity, you know, food, like all of these important ecosystem services that we all depend on. It's about complexity and things fitting together, and, you know, generalizations too, but it's also specializations, and just how complex and like wonderful like life is.
Yeah.
You know, bees really make me think about diversity and beauty and like just making the world work, you know? As well, all the other weird things, right? Like there's all kinds of interesting natural history stuff about bees. You know, one of the bees we study quite a bit, it's the only species around, but it nests in snail shells, right? So it like finds a snail shell and turns it over and fills it with, you know, rocks and pebbles and stuff like that, throws an egg inside, turns it upside down, pushes it into the grass.
There was an egg inside there?
Yeah. So it uses the snails are eaten by a bird, and there's a snail shell, and the bee then takes over the snail shell. So just like,
Just makes use of it.
Small little thing, but like, you know, multiply that, you know, exponentially in terms of the diversity and like, I mean, just ultimately like creativity that evolution leads to. Yeah.
No, that's a very creative way to use snail shells.
Yeah. So they're kind of like the engines of the environment, you would say?
I mean, they're one of, right? I mean, from like, you think of like the trophic structure and the complexity of a food web, right? Like and you can make a web of life.
Yeah.
It's the bottom bits that do a lot of the work, right? A lot of the heavy lifting. The microbes and fungi in the soil, and of course the plants turning the sun into food, and then the insects like moving that up the food chain, right? So bees, I think, are, you know, important, one, like because they are enacting sexual reproduction of many, many plants around the world, right?
Yeah.
That depend on insect, you know, pollination versus like wind or water. But I mean, for humans, I mean, the diversity of foods, the nutritious, colorful, accessible, pickable foods that we love, we got to thank bees for those.
That reminds me of that one story in China. It was a long time ago. I don't know if you've heard of the story before. It was, they've decided, it was, I think, a city where they've decided to eliminate, sort of. I'm not sure, it's probably a fictional story. They just decided to kill all sorts of insects. Fundamentally, every single, like, pests, you could say. Rats, insects, all of them. And after they did that, for a few years after, there was a horrible drought and the soil would just not fertilize, right? So that it just tracks back to what you were saying about how bees were just fundamental to nature, the environment.
Yeah, I mean,
fertilization.
I have heard a story like this, of course, during like Mao era, like even villagers or farmers would kill all the birds because the birds would eat the grain and stuff that competes with the people. So like the fallacy there is like thinking that we are above everything else, right? That like anthropocentric view, which is, you know, very typical in society, that like human want and need is above everything else, right? And when we think of nature and environment, and look where that ended. It ended in famine, right, and drought. And so we got to be more mindful of this like ecocentric kind of humans are part of nature, not separate from nature, right? And that I think is like a big guiding force in, again, how we apply ecology or think about nature and nature-based solutions and you know, that human-nature connection. Yeah.
So moving on to BioAO1, if you could give like a brief explanation of what your course like kind of goes over or talks about, and like how that intrigues students to take your course, would you say?
Well, y'all got to take the course because it's a prerequisite, right? Like kicks off your undergrad, right? And so for those listening, like who haven't taken BioAO1 before, it's like Bio 101, right? Like first year bio. It's very typical. 20 years ago when I was an undergrad, I took my first year biology course, the same format, right? Yeah. Couple professors, they teach different modules. It's like intending to introduce you to a range of topics, kind of catch everybody up who are coming from different situations in high school and so on, you know? And we structure AO1 and AO2 around these different modules, and you know, the order of them is meant to build, right? And so, hey, I mean, what do I say in class? Like, nothing in life makes sense in the absence of evolution, right? We need to understand evolution to make sense of everything else. And that includes, like, again, environmental management, it includes medical science, right? You know, how vaccines and dealing with viruses and bacteria and stuff is all connected to like our understanding of evolution. So yeah, we kick off with evolution that first month, and the goal is to simply, you know, get it across like how it works, right? There is a basic framework for how we understand evolution works, how it connects to genetics, how it connects to the environment, and how that kind of like nature, nurture effects influence fitness, right? Yeah. And fitness being like survival and reproduction, which in the natural world, that's like how we pass our genes on to the next generation, and you know, those adaptations that we or our communities have accrued, right? So I mean, of course, you know, there's a longer conversation there about like the relevance of like humans and reproductive fitness versus, you know, the birds and the bees and the plants and so on. But yeah, that's kind of where it is. And you know, it's the first semester, it's the first month. Yeah. And you guys know, it's packed in the first month, right? Because everybody's like figuring out university, right? And a lot of people are online, but they want to come to class. And so, that first month is always really exciting. And I try to like bring some energy to the class, to the examples, to get people excited about it, right? Because like I'm excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Could you tell us some common mistakes first-year students do, and how could they avoid it possibly?
Yeah, it's tough to like put that on a first-year student, right? Like mistakes. It's not mistakes. It's just we're learning, right? Like we're learning how to study. We're learning how to be organized. And again, a lot of students come with that, right? Not everyone does, and that's a big part of what university is about, right? Like figuring out your habits and how they fit into the way in which the material is conveyed to you, right? And the material is offered in many formats, right? From me up in the room to it being recorded and you watch my face on a video to, audio recordings, to the lectures being posted, to the textbook and all of the kind of ancillary electronic bits to the textbook and, FSGs and on and on and on. There's so many ways to engage in the course material. And to some people that could be daunting. And so maybe here's where a mistake is, right? Trying to do it all, right? Maybe, again, it's not really a mistake, but you're trying to figure out what works for you, right? So I tend to suggest to people who ask me, which inevitably first class 10 and then the next class 20 more and the next class on and on, how do I study? Well, I do it one way. When I was undergrad,
It's personal.
it's personal, right? Like I had to write things out. My hand would be hurting by the end of the night when I'm studying. Other people can just sit back and like 1.5 times listen to the recording 6 times in a row or something. And others need a different way, right? So I try not to be too prescriptive. But I think the mistake maybe undergrads in first year have is like giving themselves some care, right? Worrying that there's too much material and I have to consume it in all different ways. Just be nice to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes undergrads forget that because in first year, especially because not only is it like a lot of material, but it's a new environment. Like suddenly you're out of a class size of like 30 or 25 or 35 or something to 400. And, you look over and someone looks like they have it together or they know what they're doing.
It's intimidating.
It's intimidating, right?
Yeah.
And I try to just say like, just be kind to yourself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Would you say your course is more lecture based, or do students have to read the textbooks as well? Because we have
ultimate
experience when it comes to that. That is the
No,
ultimate
because
question.
I get that question all the time. And like, the question being like, oh, what should I study? The lecture or the textbook? It's like, well, like I'm basing the lectures on the core concepts in the textbook, the things that are bolded and underlined and have an extra figure assigned to it. But if I just read off the textbook, I would lose, there would be loss of interest, right? Like, and so trying to like pepper in additional examples that are complementary to what we're talking about in the textbook is my approach. Now, with that approach, like, you don't want to just memorize examples, right? You want to understand the concepts, the definitions, the terms that are used, and be able to explain that. So to me, I wouldn't say just do lectures or just do the textbook. Like I know it's the wrong answer that people want to hear, but I say, you got to do both.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the basic of preparation for this course and others. Like assigned readings are there for a reason, right? They're meant to supplement or like extend or bring that core information in,
Yeah.
So the answer is both.
Both.
And
That's
many
the
students have heard me say that,
They
and
don't
they
like that
probably kind of cringe away when I say that, but it is the case.
It's true. It's just to add on, because when you have so many forms of information, it's very easy to think that you're missing out just because you're choosing one over the other, and also thinking that you don't have enough time to just consume every single form that is given to you. So it could be counterproductive for some people.
It totally, and I get that too because everyone's taken like 5 courses. Right?
Yeah.
I'm just teaching one module of one course, and I'm telling you for this module, for this course, like this is where you want to get to. But yeah, like, and that gets back to the point about like how best to study or how to do it the way that's the most effective for you is a lot of people don't figure that out right away in first year. Like it takes time, and it takes a success. It takes a failure, not a fail, but like a failure in reading the room or interpreting what I should be expected to do in this assignment or whatever. But you learn from that. I mean, like I teach first year bio, and my first year bio mark was probably like 66 or something, right?
Oh, that gives me so much hope.
Well, I'm just saying, like, and again, think about that, right? Like in first year, when you're actually coming up to the time when you're graduating and you're moving on to your next step, they're not always taking all your grades, right? They're taking often the last 2 years or a certain number of credits.
Yeah.
And so, like, again, first year, it's getting everybody up to speed, and hopefully jumping those hurdles and like handling those failures and getting back up and going again is what you want to be able to do.
So most questions on like the midterm or the final are coming from lectures or like stuff you see in a textbook.
Yeah, again, that is the question I get 300 times every semester.
It must be annoying for you.
No, it's not annoying. It's not. But the truth is it's both. And like you can jump online and be like, oh, Professor MacIvor's all lectures, and then the next comment is, oh, Professor MacIvor is all textbooks. So like everybody's understanding it, and everyone is preparing and interpreting in different ways. And I mean, it's a class of like 1,700 people, right? So there's going to be diversity in the approach and the accessibility and how it all goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So try to just worry about yourself. Yeah.
So you teach students across different years. Could you tell us how biology courses change from first year studies to fourth year?
Yeah. So that's an important thing here too is among the faculty in any university, and particularly here in BioSci, is you have teaching faculty and you have research faculty, right? And teaching faculty teach more courses and do less or little research, but they still obviously do research. But research faculty is more research heavy, right? So I have a lab, and we have grad students and postdocs and a bunch of undergrads who all work on different things in our lab. And the point I'm getting to is I teach 2 courses a year, right? So I teach AO1, and then I teach a fourth year course. So that like missing middle, a lot of students, they interact with me in first year, and then they don't see me for 3-4 years, and then they have me again in fourth year. So I can't say for sure like what listeners should expect going from 1 year to 2 year to 3 year to 4 year, but you got to know that in first year it is a lot more structured, regimented. In terms of how assignments are delivered or and graded. The material is more generalized. It's maybe larger class sizes, whereas as you go up and up and up, the class sizes are smaller. There's more opportunities to have those, direct discussions, kind of like, go on a tangent and like really follow like what the student is interested in. So yeah, I don't know if I have a great answer for that. I'm so sorry, but ultimately, more engaged. In terms of how the course flows, more independence in terms of the criteria for an assignment or whatever, and more direct contact. Like for my fourth year course, there's no office hours because you can meet me whenever you want or whenever is mutually available, right?
Yeah.
And just having more direct, connection to the professor, the TA, and your classmates. Because again, when you get up to your third or fourth year, you're beginning to specialize, or you're getting really interested in bees or something else, and you find yourself in circles with others that are also interested in those things. So it can be kind of motivating, right? You're like in a third or fourth year class, like everyone's like excited about an assignment, or they kind of know, or we can all commiserate together and help each other out. Yeah, so it's a lot more collegial. Yeah, and by third, fourth year, sometimes a lot of students are directly integrated into a lab, right, and working with graduate students and so on. So you start to see life outside of undergrad and like what doing this stuff in a lab-based course like actually can amount to.
Because from personal experience, I could say as bio students, just growing up, even I'm talking back like fourth grade, they keep mentioning the same concepts It just keeps getting more and more detailed as you go. Like enzymes, for example, I think the first time I heard that word was in like fifth grade.
Photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis. It just keeps getting more and more detailed every year. It's like you're expecting the same things at this point. We've already seen the entire thing, but then it just keeps getting more and more detailed.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
do you think that's how it is, or it's just
I do. I mean, that's science.
That
Right?
is
Like
science
that's
in
a
general?
great analogy for all things science. Like I often say, like even in studying ecology and biodiversity, you know, you look for something, you ask a question, you design an experiment to answer that question, you get some results, you analyze it and you interpret it, and then what do? You go further, right?
Yeah.
You scratch down, and then what do you find? More, right? You find more in the question. So that's one of the most exhilarating things about science is like the pursuit, right? Like science is not definitive. It changes and grows and adapts with more information and more technology and more people thinking about things differently, right? So that to me is a really exciting thing about science. And so to your point, you're right. Like photosynthesis in grade 4 is different from photosynthesis in grade 10. It's different from photosynthesis in third year.
Yeah. It just keeps getting like the terms just stop being vague, you know? Like let's say you're learning about enzymes, right? They just put on the term. They say, oh well, an enzyme just binds to something. And then you get to first year, it's like, okay, there's inhibitors, there's an active site, there's this, there's that. It just keeps going. But you just brought up a point about research and labs. So we just wanted to ask, what would be, or what's a current project you're working on?
What's a current project I'm working on?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean,
You
we've spoken
run a
about
lab.
your
How much time you
prize.
got? Yeah. What's
You,
up?
you run a lab.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a lab. It's called the Bugs Lab. Biodiversity of urban green spaces. It's just like such an excellent coincidence that I also study bugs, like insects. But yeah, I mean, we're really interested in anthropogenic stressors or change, right? So like we think of like urbanization as one of those, right? And what is urbanization, right? It's like changing the landscape, right, to be more conducive to the needs of people. And when we do that, we learn that actually people also need green space as well, right, to feel connected to the environment, for recreation, for our health, right, our well-being. And so when we consider these green spaces in places where people are the focus, we find that biodiversity is there. Like when you erase nature finds a way to fill that gap again, right? Like it's filling those spaces. And so when we create cities, nature ends up filling those spaces. And sometimes we get things like invasive species, and other times, especially when we are considerate of the design such that biodiversity could benefit, we can actually see benefits, right? We see biodiversity being supported, or like there being some resiliency in that biodiversity when we are cognizant of it. And you know, we can do a lot of things as humans. We've learned a lot about how to support biodiversity, and there are some very effective strategies. So back to my lab, we're really interested in identifying what works, right? And implementing that so that we can minimize trade-offs, right? And ultimately, a lot of urban planning is trade-offs. We need to have road infrastructure so that we can access hospitals, or we need housing for people to live and thrive and be healthy. That's often a trade-off with the needs for nature, for the environment. And so in our lab, we're really interested in synergies. Like, how can we identify the trade-offs so that we can coexist, exactly. Like, be creative and use technology and use approaches that we have developed over decades and decades of studying urban ecology and biodiversity conservation, and integrating that into cities so that we can minimize the trade-offs and maximize the synergies. The synergies being, developing cities in a way that supports both the needs of people and nature. And I know that sounds like really like harmonious and like hippie,
Naive,
peaceful. It's idealistic. It is, but that's needed.
I mean, if you're not working for an ideal society, what are you working for?
Thank
right?
you. Yeah, I completely agree. So your question, what are we working on? Well, one thing that we're really interested in is the fact that urbanization, that like percent urban cover, pavement coverage, whatever, is often what we measure like spatially to define how urban or how negative an impact there might be on birds or bees or bats or plants or something, right? But urbanization actually changes other things too, like the local microclimate. It might make it hotter. It might make it drier. There might be other factors like pollution that's associated with urbanization, like higher levels of ozone or like sulfur dioxide or microplastics. There may be, other factors that we're not really considering. We're just kind of like painting it with a broad stroke urban cover when we do these studies to understand how urbanization is affecting diversity. So in our lab, we're really interested in disentangling these factors and building them up. So how can we manipulate some of these environmental stressors in an urban environment to figure out which ones are more important and how can we then manage for those? So one thing that we're doing is we study bees, as you know, and we particularly study these bees that we refer to as cavity nesting bees. These are bees that nest above the ground. And if you've ever been to like a Home Depot or wherever, or in a environmental science class, maybe in high school, where you build a bee hotel, it's basically like bundling sticks together that have holes in those sticks, like bamboo style sticks and branches, bundling them together, and this creates habitat for the bees that nest in those kinds of environments. We can like make them better and with varying widths and use like paper or cardboard or wood to diversify these structures so that they're accommodating to more different kinds of species. And then we can manipulate those structures. So we can place them along an urbanization gradient, but then like paint them different colors so they're hotter or cooler. We can like add dehumidification packets to the boxes and increase or decrease the humidity in those boxes as well. And so where we often think of urbanization and temperature and humidity all being correlated, so why would we measure all three? We just need to measure urbanization. We can actually manipulate all of these factors individually, and then see which ones are more important for reproductive fitness, parasitism, other factors that lead to mortality or success. So manipulating environmental stressors is a big one for us these days, and there's other examples of how we're doing that. Another is we've been really getting into like technology that improves the automation of the biomonitoring that we do. And this is like mainly built out of COVID, because at the time we had to kind of recast some of our research. Before, we're climbing onto roofs of buildings around the city, and suddenly we can't go up there anymore, right? We're barred from going up. So we started thinking a lot more about how we measure things, and that led us to start studying drones and using like low altitude drones to collect like high quality images to study landscapes broadly. Like, for example, when ecologists go to understand the success of a restoration project to inform practitioners and funders, right? We may go out there and it's a huge, landscape, hundreds of meters square. And what do? Well, we grid the whole thing and we randomly choose grid squares, and then we go to those squares and we survey in that square, and then we extrapolate that up to the entire environment. But with like low altitude drones and remote sensing, we can fly over that whole area, ground truth, go there and say, yeah, that flower is that species and this flower is that species. But from these images that we collect over large scales, we can integrate them all together, train the computer to say, yeah, that yellow dot in that flower is, or in that huge image is that species, and so on. So we can train an algorithm to start to tell us what's in that environment, the whole environment.
Instead of just picking out random areas.
Exactly. And so if we're studying monarch butterflies and we need to know their habitat, which is milkweed plants, monarch butterflies are endangered species, right? We need to protect we have such a cultural impact. In fact, actually, one of the original members of the biological science department were the husband and wife that figured out the migratory pathway of monarch butterflies in North America. So it's actually a really cool connection to UTSC. We want to study what their habitat needs are. Where are the milkweeds? Well, instead of like hiking through, maybe crushing some milkweeds, walking through and only recording like a subset of data and then saying it's this, we can now, with a bit of work, it's still a lot of work, but like map the entire environment so that we can say, hey, partner, there's, 87,311 milkweed plants in this field. And then using different kinds of cameras, using like LiDAR imaging, which builds like a three-dimensional model of the landscape, or like multispectral imaging, which tells us about like the health of the plants. Maybe and we're not there yet, but we're working on it. Like maybe we could say to the practitioner, hey, you got money to support monarch butterflies. Well, there's 87,311 milkweed plants in the habitat that you are spending money to maintain. And, 50% of those plants are experiencing drought, and 30% of those plants have herbivory on them that is linked to the monarch butterfly caterpillar. So how can we start to use automated, large-scale methods to ask like clear ecological interaction questions that have like conservation outcomes, right? And the last thing quickly, because we're doing this, is camera traps. So
Camera traps.
yeah, so you think of a camera trap, you think of like monitoring a tiger in a forest, right? And that's the main way in which we use these is to monitor large animals in remote places or rare animals and things like this. But again, as this technology advances and becomes less expensive, now you're on Instagram, you get a sponsored content image of like a bird feeder with a camera on it. And like it's connected to the Merlin app and it tells you what bird species is in your backyard. The cameras have improved to become more macro, like focused and over in smaller areas, are really high quality. Cameras that run 24 hours, cameras that have that AI sensor embedded, so you can like train a model to like tell me if it's a bumblebee or a honeybee. So we use camera traps now to monitor activity on flowers. One, typically again, we'd send students out and they would set their clock and they would watch a flower for 15 or 25 minutes and we'd record all the visitors to that flower. But the flower is open for a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
So with a camera, we can get from the moment the flower opens to it dies and get all the visitors, right? And then use, other methods, computational methods to like tease out from all those photos or all that video, like what species were there and how many. So we've been doing these kinds of approaches to greatly improve the amount of data, the precision of that work, and the automated nature of it, so that this coming year when we go to study plant pollinator interactions and bird vocalizations on green roofs across the city, we just need to go up, set up the microphone, set up the camera trap, set up the solar panel, walk away, and don't disturb anything. We don't need to like continually ask for permission to go up, and so we can do that work and get lots of data for and probably over more different sites if we have enough money to buy more cameras and stuff. But colleagues of ours who work like in the north, right? Remote access. You got to get a helicopter to get up somewhere. To do that every single day to collect data on a plant pollinator interaction that's being affected by climate change is expensive. But if we can set up like an automated device to record that visitation, then we'll get a lot of data and we'll spend less money.
It's just more efficient all over.
Well, it's like harnessing technology, right? That is being harnessed, right? In lots of different disciplines, and ecology and environmental science and biomonitoring there's an opportunity here. Yeah.
So, okay, moving on to research. Nowadays, is sending out an email to a lab or a professor like the only way that anyone can land a research position? Or if not, what can help a student stand out when applying to a position?
Yeah, good question. I mean, that is like the main way. Like, introduce yourself, right? Introduce yourself, like in class or by email is fine. We're not like, we get a lot of emails, but we're not like cold-hearted. Like I read these emails, right? Yeah, of course. And
I've sent so many and not one reply.
Well, I mean, you guys are first year, right? And I think that there's this like, not a completely entire perspective across all faculty, but I think a lot of people, like I mentioned earlier, about like kind of being kind to yourself and like really trying to get your study habits going and that kind of organization skills that one needs to develop in undergrad. We kind of want you to do that first, right? In that first year, just get a hold of what's going on, right? Because there's a lot going on. And of course, getting that kind of experience in a lab is super important, and I really recommend it. But it's something that life is long, and you've got a couple years in undergrad, and I would encourage people to start to think about that going into second year versus trying to do it in the first year. Like, for example, you mentioned an email connection, trying to introduce yourself. Sending those in first year is totally fine. Just don't beat yourself up if you don't get the exact response you want. Like, maybe first year students who contact me, I often say what I just said, right? I'm like, hey, thanks so much for your interest. We always are looking for people, especially people motivated in this space that we work in.
But not first years.
But first years, we at least for me personally, and I teach first year, so I see it. I want everyone to just kind of you got to get your grades going. You got to get your habits going before you jump into this next thing. Because, if you start working in a lab, volunteering in a lab, you got to be professional about that too, right? You want to be there for the times you say you're going to be there. You're going to do the work you say you're going to do. You're going to collaborate with, again, other undergrads, more senior ones, or graduate students, or even postdocs, or the PI themselves. And you want that to go really well, right? You don't want to be like, I can't come because I got an assignment due tomorrow. Of course, many of us are very accommodating to those things. School matters, and we should prioritize getting your things done so they're not late and all those things. But you don't want to get yourself in that spot if you can avoid it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I tend to say first year is really focus on your schooling, maybe getting involved in clubs, meet people, right?
Yeah.
Try to have fun and get acquainted with how it works. And then that stuff will come next for the people who really are pursuing it. But yes, email first. I always get people come first year bio, meet me, want to talk. We often have office hours. That's another great time to have good contact with the faculty. And then, not everybody, it depends on what you're interested in, but I'm speaking of for me and for the work that we do, it's very seasonal. So, in the winter, we're mainly analyzing data or processing samples from the previous field season. And a lot of that team is already embedded, but come summer, spring, summer, fall, that's when we do need team, right? We need people to help with the various projects. And so that's where it really starts to kick off. So and that's a time where I say to first years, okay, now you've done first year. Now you're going into second year. So reach out to me in the summer, because we have work study positions. We have B98 positions that you're now eligible for because the prerequisites are AO1 and AO2. I don't know. You want to keep going in that direction? I can keep talking, but maybe you've got more questions about that process. But yeah, certainly we have students, undergrads in the lab who stay in the lab for 3 years. They go through all the credits, the different awards that are possible, and by the end, you've got your CV, you've got your transcript, but you've got the CV full of stuff too, right? I went to a conference. I contributed to this paper. I learned this method. Those are the things you want to highlight in a CV. Yeah.
So talking about labs for medical schools, does it matter what area of biology you worked in at labs, or can it be any subject in biology?
Ooh, good question. I mean, there's two parts. One, any experience is good, right? In the context of working in a lab space, right? The second part to that, of course, is subject matter relevance, right? If you're someone who's really interested in kidney diseases, if you can get into a lab that does that, that's going to be really beneficial for you.
Yeah, but it's specific.
Sure, yeah. And you know what, too, as I said, I know it's not the same as medical diversity in terms of what you could study, but again, I went into university thinking I'm going to study coral, and then I'm studying flies, and then I'm switching to green roofs, and then I'm over here. So life throws different things at you, and things can click. And I've certainly had students in the lab who, joined our lab because they were looking for work experience and they wanted to go to medical school, and that's fine and great. But by the end of their undergrad, they're thinking, medical school, I actually don't know. I think that was just my mom who really wanted that for me.
It may have not been the ultimate goal that I wanted for myself.
Hey, university, we're all adults. You're learning lots of new things, right? That's the best thing about university is exposure to just different things and different ways of thinking.
You have to be open.
Yeah,
it's not going to always go the same way you want.
100%. And I definitely get 10 or 15 students on the first day of class in AO1 who are like, I want to go to medical school. Like, what do I need to do in this class to get to medical school? I'm like, it is so early and you might change your mind.
You have a lot of time.
You got a lot of time. I mean, time's ticking, but like, yes, you do have time, right? So back to your question, students who are interested in medical school, yes, getting lab experience is valuable. Like, okay, we're a lab, we mainly study bees and urban ecology and biodiversity, but we do DNA extractions, we do lab work, we use instruments that are translatable to different fields. We have a wet lab, we have, expected safety protocols and all those things. And, if you can kind of convey what your goals are, or your aspirations are early on, sometimes labs aren't usually doing one specific thing. There may be a dozen different things happening in that lab. And if we know hey, you really want to get into surgery, we can start to think about what kinds of skills you could learn that use your fingers, very careful work, because even that is a translatable skill, pinning and curating tiny little insects so that we have a collection that can be used in 100 years takes very careful, deliberate, instructed work, right? And similarly, in the medical field, you need a lot of those skills as well. So then, you now have an arc that you can describe in your CV, right? And so we want to work with undergrads to know where you want to go so that we can start to help build those skills, maybe show you something different, right? And, funny story, one of my early undergrads when I first started here, he went through my lab and did a lot of great work on deadwood decomposition and soil and stuff, and had a paper out and stuff, and he became a dentist. Oh. And now one of my students is his patient. So there's this knock-on connection. And yeah, we've had students who've come through the lab who went off to medical school or dental school or other things. And just don't pass up on opportunities, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for a student that's interested in potentially taking a research lab or a research position in, let's say, the summer or second year, third year, if you could narrow it down to, let's say, 3 core skills that a student could possess, what would you say that professors look for when recruiting?
Wow, good question. Okay, so first of all, when we're recruiting undergrads, we're not expecting you to have a whole slew of skills. You're going to learn those skills, right? Mm-hmm. And often, your first experience in doing research in a lab as an undergrad, you gotta ground yourself a little bit. You're not gonna be solving the next big problem, right? You certainly could be contributing to that, but often it's getting the skills that you're developing skills based on data generation or checking things over, running assays or protocols that are inherently embedded in the lab. We're working you into that system, right? So my first point is, again, be kind to yourself. Don't think that I can't join this lab because I don't know how to do this stuff. Well, you're going to learn it, right? Mm-hmm. So the first would be willingness to learn, right? Being excited to learn a new skill, right? Is something I would really encourage you to kind of instill in oneself. When you're writing that email, it's I'm excited to take on this such and such skill, so on. That'd be one thing. I think another could be patience, right? So again, I'm not giving you examples you need to know how to do DNA extractions or something these are broad things, right? Mm-hmm. Patience, because sometimes you join a lab and maybe you're not immediately doing the thing that you really want to do, but it builds up to that, right? My first position outside of the honeybee thing in undergrad was working in a lab that studied insect pest management in canola fields. And so I would my job, I'd have my coffee in second year in the summer, whatever, I'd walk into the lab, there'd be a big walk-in freezer, bigger than this room, and it'd just be floor to ceiling of bags of pods of canola plants. And had to sort through those bags and identify the weevil and the moth that are feeding on the seeds that affect the farmer's crop yield, right? And it felt infinity amount of bags, it's just so many. and I didn't have any other task. Like it was just crunch through those bags and get the data so that analysis can be completed and results can be generated. And I definitely caught myself a few times being like, like, is this science? Like, am I doing science right now?
Might be a little too boring.
Well, yeah. I mean, it wasn't fully boring. I mean, there's collegiate here. I'm sitting with a couple other undergrads, and we're all working on together and laughing and chatting and you know, building those bonds and so on. So of course it wasn't all bad at all, but you know, in hindsight, I reflect on that and I'm like, wow, like, okay, that was really monotonous. And yeah, at times it was boring, or I didn't, you know, maybe I thought I'd be doing more, but these build, you know, meticulous, careful, methodical skill sets that with some patience can really like be so foundational for the next thing you do, which wasn't for me seed pods of these canola. Although we do a little bit of that stuff now in the lab, so it's funny. Third, I guess.
Can I pitch in?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Would you say being stubborn when it comes to like applying or working as well, being stubborn?
Well, I don't know
In a
about
positive sense, you know, not in the negative way where you're just being, you know,
Yeah,
annoying
yeah.
to your
maybe let's
professor.
change it. Let's say like resilient.
Adamant. Nope.
Resilient for sure, in the sense that like you don't want to be adamant. Could be like on the gradient of pestering. You don't want to get there.
Yeah, a little
But
annoying.
resilient, what I mean is like, okay, I really want to work in this lab. I'm going to carefully craft an email. I send that email, no reply.
Oh.
What do you do, right? Is it like
You give
life
up.
is over? I can't do that kind of thing anymore. No,
They don't
you
take
have
anyone
to.
anymore.
You have to pick yourself up and do the next email, right? And do that. Try again, because I will say, in academia, it is full of failure. Like you don't get that grant you wanted. You didn't get that award. How am I going to fund myself over the summer? You know, there's always these like moments that test you. Yeah, really. Even in undergrad, right? With assignments and grade, you get a terrible grade. My life's over. No, it's you have to build from that, right? Like lock in and keep going. And it never stops. It's still today to this day. Like I'm waiting in 2 weeks on my big federal grant, and like
And you never know.
I hope.
Oh,
I
hopefully,
really hope.
hopefully.
And if not, then I need to kind of recalibrate and try something else.
Yeah.
Plan B.
What's that?
Plan B.
Plan B.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Always.
exactly. You always have to have
Well,
that.
good
So-
thing you brought up the marks, because we want your reaction when it comes to your rate my prof ratings,
Okay. Yeah,
because
go
that's a
ahead.
little exciting.
Let's
Okay,
do
you
this.
have a 3.9, which
Okay.
is really good.
Is that good?
It's really good.
And like overall quality.
Yeah, it's out of 5. It's
Yeah.
it's, really
It's out of
decent.
5, I know that, but yeah.
I've seen like 2s and 1s, so a 3.9 is pretty good. And 75% of your students said, well, the people that rated said they would take your course again.
Okay. Is that good?
That's
75? 75 is good, right?
That's good, yeah. I mean, and anyway, they gave you a 3.1 level of difficulty though.
Is
Out of
that-
5?
Is that bad or?
I think so, yeah, I believe so. That's it's all right.
Okay, I guess. I mean, maybe you don't, from my perspective, you don't want to be just known as the easy,
Yeah.
right? But you
Yeah.
also don't want to be, I think that's a respectable.
No, it's respectful, you know.
Okay.
And then the top tags are like the most common, you could say, traits people said about you were caring,
Oh,
amazing lectures, lecture heavy, accessible outside class, which you mentioned already. You said, you know, for 3 students, it's about mutual like
Right.
accessibleness.
okay.
And they said, get ready to read. Just like I don't know how
That's
these two
true.
came together with the lecture heavy and get ready
Yeah.
to read.
You're doubles, yeah.
Yeah. And I'll give you 2 ratings, right?
'Kay,
One
go.
on the
Yeah.
higher side and one on the lower side.
Okay.
The 5-star rating said, such a great prof, genuinely passionate about what he teaches. And I can attest to that. I've been seeing that throughout this
You
episode.
guys had me. I mean, hopefully you wrote that, right?
No, it wasn't me personally, but
sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
and is so helpful.
Okay.
Go to office hours, ask questions. He will never make you feel dumb. His test was great too. Maybe I can't attest to that one. The questions themselves were easy as long as you studied and kept up with content. Okay, maybe they called me
Okay.
out at this point. You'll be just fine.
The first
Okay.
test wasn't that bad though. I feel like it
I
wasn't
think
that
I
bad.
think I was just distracted. You know, it's just the first test. I wasn't really focused on the
It's
academic
the
side.
first test.
Yeah.
Right? And I think
It's a culture shock.
it's a
It
shock.
is. It is.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's keep going. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you.
No. We want what you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, about that comment, that's very sweet. I mean, thank you, person who wrote that. Yeah, I didn't write it. Okay. Yeah.
You know what? That's good to know.
Yeah. No. I mean, that's great and encouraging as a professor to hear positive feedback,
That's good.
as you'd expect.
You know,
right?
that comment was very necessary because a lot of people think of professors as just some, heartless robots who just work.
Or like grading machines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
80, 60. I don't care.
Well, you guys know in first year, it's so structured, right? There's the course coordinators, there's the TAs, there's the lab coordinators, and so on and so forth. So I actually don't grade anything in first year.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah, it's the TAs.
How could I?
Yeah.
There's so many.
True.
So it's a little different there.
But
Okay.
yeah,
Give me the bad one.
Let's
now.
go. This was really short. That first midterm absolutely wrecked me. It was a 3-star. It was a brutal reality check. I mean, it's not really negative. It's just more of a personal experience.
I feel like it's kind of true though. Like coming in from like
was
high
very
school tests to like university where you have like instead of maybe 30 questions, it's 60 or like 75.
Yeah.
You only have an hour.
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
to-
And
Yeah,
then they,
2 hours, but
they
yeah.
tell you it's like, oh, well, it's multiple choice. You think it's way easier, so you just start slipping up, letting it go, procrastinating. It's a really big thing, especially with first years nowadays.
Or just like walking into the lecture hall, like seeing all of those seats, it's like a little
Yeah.
intimidating.
Did you guys do the exam in Highland Hall, like
Yeah,
in the big one?
I was in Highland Hall.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I did it in the theater. That
You
was,
did. Yeah.
the tables are
Yeah.
really smart over there. But overall, the exam, it wasn't bad. I think a lot of us were just not prepared, especially
Yeah.
because of high school.
Well, we try to go over like practice questions throughout, which I think is a strategy, right? To like kind of get people prepped. But, in the moment when the clock's ticking and you're like reading a question and, some of the answers are a sentence or a little bit less, whatever. Yeah, I mean,
Makes it that much harder.
I was once you guys. Like I was an undergrad and I totally remember. But yeah, in a class that size, that is a grading format that's like conducive to the size and the material. Changes as you go to second, third, fourth year, right? Yeah.
So, final question. What's one big misconception you have noticed high schoolers talk about coming into university? What you have realized is completely not true?
I think the one thing that I see a lot, and I kind of touched on this earlier, is, again, you look on Reddit or something, right? Like, oh, like I got accepted to UTSC. I'm going for comp sci, getting co-op, whatever. You have like very rigid idea of what you're going to do to get the job that you want. But university is, again, a
Very
place. Very
vague.
vague. Ooh.
I'll just say it's just open.
It's open. I mean, and partly intentionally so, right? Like you want to kind of expand and spread your wings and become a person outside of high school and new people and stuff. And I think maybe these days, like a lot of students, and I mean the way the world is and so on, right? Like you kind of have to like make a plan to have a career. Like we can't even have hobbies now, right? Without it being like monetized and stuff, right? And I think that translates a little bit into like the university experience, like what I'm gonna do. And then when it doesn't go the way you want, you lose your mind, right? And
It's disappointing.
yeah, super disappointing. And so that's the one thing I mean, it's hard to impress upon like someone coming out of high school that like it'll be okay, like when you've built yourself up, or like within your family or your friend group, you've built yourself up to like, this is what I'm gonna do. And then things can change and things sometimes don't go the way you want it to. But I think when you finish university, you like look back on it, you're like, yeah, I actually learned a lot of stuff here. And my life is where it's at because of that. And that could be what I said I was going to do in high school or something different, you know?
I feel like a lot of kids also realize that they can slow down. Like they don't have to complete everything as soon as they get to university.
What do you mean by that?
Like, for example, coming in, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to send emails to labs as soon as I get to university. I'm going to get ahead of my classes, talk to all my professors, get as many connections as I can. I'm going to strive to finish in as quick as I can, apply to medical school.
Right.
But like coming in, you start talking to people and your professors and you're like, you know what? Like, I don't have to get all of this out of the way as soon as I get to university. Like I can, chill a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Decelerate a
Yeah,
little.
Yeah,
it may
exactly.
be more effective, moving forward. Because a lot of people walk in here with such a golden expectation of what their life is going to be. Like, okay, I'm gonna balance, going out, I'm gonna balance my social life, I'm gonna balance, hobbies, and then education, and then this, and maybe so for some people being student athletes. But then you realize it takes a lot of time to build those habits and to eliminate old habits as well, which a lot of people don't talk about.
Yeah, that's
Like
one too. Right?
procrastination.
Yeah.
I mean, that caught up to me all the way till first semester.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the case, right? Like things change when you go to university, like in terms of the material, how it's delivered, new people, and yeah, I think if you like just focus on like quote unquote like locking in on that, you're gonna miss out on all the stuff around you, right? Like look at you guys like doing a podcast here, right? So it's more to university than a grade, although people don't want to hear that either, right?
Yeah,
That's not extremely helpful because we know like grades do matter, and like that's kind of like the way in which people are adjudicated over like for the next opportunity, right? So you can't deny that you need to like maintain your grades, and that comes with study habits and organization and those kinds of things. But university is more than that too.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
This was a great episode.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that went by.